Welcome back to All Things Money. I'm David Blain, and for this segment we're going to have a little bit of fun talking about the IRS and taxes. I recently came across two interesting articles, one about filing taxes and the other about customer service at the IRS. And we don't want to beat up on the IRS too bad, but this time of year everybody starts thinking about taxes, so I thought it would be interesting to bring some of this up. In a recent interview, the IRS Commissioner Doug Schulman revealed that he does not prepare his own taxes, that he feels that the tax code is too complicated and that he can't prepare his own taxes, which in itself is nothing against him. It's just kind of curious that our own IRS commissioner feels that the taxes are too complicated to prepare his own taxes, and so he has to hire someone. Interestingly, we find that about 66% of Americans use a paid tax preparer, and another 20% use some sort of tax filing software. So all in all, over 80% of Americans, hardly anybody fills out the forms by hand anymore. It's too complicated. You have, this box on the form is dependent on this form, and it gets very confusing if you try to do it by hand. Of course, we prepare our clients' taxes and are very familiar with the complexity of the tax code and certainly advocate for simplification of it. And it's just kind of telling when you see, of course, you've heard a lot of the scandals of, Timothy Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, which is the department that sets the tax regulations for the IRS. He had problems filing his taxes. Some of our senators and congressmen, Barney Frank, and some of these other people have been having a lot of problems. And they're the people that are writing the tax code and deal with it every day. And so it's very disheartening to see that, to expect that an individual taxpayer can understand the tax code and fill the forms out himself. So one of the other things that's interesting I came across was the calling the IRS. The IRS every year sets a goal as far as dealing with consumers and their calls to the IRS. And it's interesting, in the year 2010, the IRS goal is to answer 71% of taxpayers' calls. And I'm sorry, I just had to chuckle at this, is that, most people, you go to a sports team and they all want to go to the Super Bowl, or, you've got employees at work and they want to give 100% or, 110%. Well, the IRS's goal is to answer 71% of the calls that they receive. And I just think that's a very interesting call. The IRS says that 85% of its calls are answered within 5 minutes. I don't know who they polled for that. I have to call the IRS a lot to assist with our clients' taxes. I have never gotten through in 5 minutes, so I'm not sure who they talked about, who they were talking about in that statistic. But a couple other things that came out of Ms. Olson is what's called the taxpayer advocate, the woman that this information comes from. And the taxpayer advocate is an independent body within the IRS that is supposed to advocate for the taxpayer. So, for example, if you have a problem that you can't resolve, you can go to the taxpayer advocate and they will help your situation. In fact, we have used the taxpayer advocate in a couple of situations for people's situation that we just could not solve with the regular IRS people. So some other big things that are coming out is the inadequate taxpayer regulation. And so, believe it or not, right now, to prepare federal income taxes, all you have to do is hang your shingle out and say you'll prepare someone's taxes and they can pay you. There's no regulation, there's no test to pass, there's no registering with the IRS. And so the IRS is currently proposing some rules to bring all tax preparers under some sort of minimum standard. And I think this is a good thing, to have some minimum competency. I mean, you have to get a license to cut hair, but you don't have to have any sort of license to prepare someone's taxes, and I think that will definitely help. So that's one of the other things that's going on in the IRS. One other thing, you've probably heard this before, but a while ago, Ralph Nader, the consumer advocate, they prepared 22 identical tax returns to do a study. And it was a married couple with one child, and they submitted them to 22 different offices around the country. Each office came up with an entirely different answer as far as how much tax these people owed. It's very disconcerting to see. So even within the IRS, you cannot count on getting the correct answer from the IRS. If you call up and you have a question, and then you call up the next day and ask the same question, you're probably going to get a different answer. Even the people that work at the IRS have a very difficult time determining what the exact rules are as applied to your situation. The reason I bring this up is the value of using a preparer that knows what he's doing, especially if you have a complicated situation. Even the auditors, we had a lady a couple weeks ago that she got audited by the IRS, and they had done some things incorrectly, and so we identified it, sent it back. They gave it to a different auditor. He sent it back, and he agreed with what we told him, but then some of the other things he changed were also incorrect. Well, the bottom line is it took us 3 auditors, 3 different answers to finally get this person's taxes straight. And the auditors are typically more knowledgeable of the tax law than the average rep that you may get on the phone. And so you can see that even within the IRS, there's a lot of disparity on how to treat certain items of income and deduction. So that takes us to our next break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion about some tax tips for you. In the interim, please feel free to email us at allthingsmoney@dlblain.com. And for All Things Money, I am David Blain.